Hello everyone. As discussed in our last class, today we'll be talking about Indian literary criticism or Indian school of criticism or literary criticism in India. We have various schools of Indian literary criticism which have now not been very comprehensively acknowledged and included in our syllabus, or say most of the university syllabuses, but we have a long history and tradition of Indian literary criticism. What we call as Indian literary criticism is synonymous to what we know as Sanskrit tradition. And as far as India is concerned, it is very customary to start any Sanskrit tradition in India with reference to Vedas and Upanishads. Now, Valmiki's shloks and Bharat's Natya Shastra, they have references to the theory of rasa, which is a very important school of criticism in Sanskrit. But let's have a look at how Indian aesthetics has evolved over a period of several centuries. And it is said that it begins with Natya Shastra of Bharata in the 1st century. Now, when we say Indian aesthetics, we have to be clear about what exactly we mean by aesthetics. Aesthetics originally means something that pertains to perceptible by senses, things, material, or anything as opposed to immaterial. In the Western context, and particularly if we talk of Hegel's point of view, aesthetics means the philosophy of fine arts, which seems to actually mean that it is related to a theory of beautiful in general, whether in art or in nature. Now, these theories of aesthetics have been studied by different scholars and different thinkers. And we also know that the earliest of such theories were hedonistic in nature, and they studied the problems or the point of views towards the end of art. The theory of imitation, illusion, etc. all represent the view of the artist. Not going into too much of detail into Western aesthetics. In the context of India, it means science and philosophy of fine art. Now, let's elaborate on this, that it can be considered a branch of philosophy that studies the principles of beauty, especially in the art. Now, it is a science of fine art because the problem of art is originally a problem of technique of art. And the works wherein we study this philosophy of art are primarily concerned with the technique, and therefore the philosophy is closely related to it. Now, if a philosophy of fine art, when we say that this is a philosophy of fine art, we mean to say that the experience that the work of art arouses in the readers is aesthetic. And this aesthetic experience is accounted further in terms of different schools of philosophical thought. We will elaborate upon this concept as and when we read Natya Shastra on the concept of aesthetics, because majority of the Indian schools of criticism, and particularly the Rasa theory, they deal with the concept of absolute with the capital A, and primarily there are the three major schools of the philosophy art were Rasa, Nad, and the Vastu. So these schools dealt with like Vastu dealt with architecture, Nad dealt with music, and Rasa dealt with the experience of absolute in literature. So Rasa is not just beauty, it deals with the concept of absolute. We will be discussing it in detail when we take Natya Shastras or the summary of Natya Shastra. Although we don't have the complete text prescribed in our syllabus, we have a chapter on authorship rather, but we will take up this, a little bit of it, before we begin with the first chapter by Kapila. Indian scholars and thinkers, there are many schools, we just have a quick look at them. They formulated and actually gifted the world a very refined kind of concepts like rasa, riti, gurta, dhvani, vakrokti, auchitya, srahidya, etc. And these are some of the names which we must know who are associated with Sanskrit poetics and Indian aesthetics: Bharata, Dandin, Bahama, Anandvardhan, Abhinav Gupta. These are all responsible for enriching the tradition of literary criticism in India. So whenever we are curious and interested to know how literary criticism or Indian school of aesthetics evolved in India, we have to look at the various concepts and the famous thinkers who have contributed in evolving these schools of thought. Taking up rasa. As we talked in the first slide, Valmiki is considered a great poet and a critic, and his shlokas contain the theory of rasa, we all know. But practically, or on the papers, Bharat's Natya Shastra, it is considered that it has full ramifications of the rasa theory, because it has all the minute details and elaborations which are necessary to understand the concept of rasa. The rasa theory, which was first conceived by Bharata, was in the context of theatre, and later on it was extended to poetry, because as we know that poetry too is essentially drama, a verbal enactment of emotions. So in the context of theatre, the rasa theory, it takes into account the characters of a drama who arouse, who excite the feelings in the spectators, readers, through the setting also, in a particular scene, or certain effects of emotions and blending of all these emotions, etc. Now rasa in its as a meaning, when we look back at the meaning of rasa, it means essence. Because rasa is said to be as poetry, rasa deals with poetry as emotive expression. And since the meaning of rasa is essence or aesthetic relation, which is inherent in the artistic work, and therefore the relishable experience, the experience that it generates and we relish, which is evoked in the reader or the spectator, is known as rasa experience. And there are 9 kinds of rasa. There were 8 earlier and 9th was added later on. We will talk about all these kinds of rasas in detail when we take up Natya Shastra first chapter. Now rasa has a connection with dhvani also, because Anandvardhana, he said that rasa cannot be directly expressed but only through dhvani. And what is dhvani? Dhvani is just a suggestion. This dhvani concept, or the concept of suggestion, is also a very important concept in Sanskrit criticism, because dhvani is said to be poetry as suggestive expression, because it suggests something and it suggests the form and meaning, and how form and meaning is expressed and takes us beyond. Then we have another school which is called the Riti school, who they considered poetry as structured expression, and they emphasized manner or the style, how we say, what we say, that is, how you say what you say, and therefore considered poetry as a structured expression. Vamana is considered to be the chief exponent of this doctrine of Riti. Then we have Alamkara school. The name associated with Alamkara is Dandin, and he is one of the premier or major exponents who was interested in looking at poetry as figurative expression. Now all these critics, they are mainly rhetoricians, and they analyze poetic language language of sound or word, that is Shabd and Arth, and all those factors that enhance the beauty of expression. And they also talk of gunas, the qualities say sweetness or clarity, which are essential. In fact, they also talk of doshas, the blemishes or the flaws. Then we have another school which is known as Vakrokti. Now this concept of deviation, Vakroti is crookedness or something which is crooked. So this concept of deviation, if deviation happens in poetry, how does it account for a poetic charm? And what are the stylistic features, phonological features or syntactic features or figures of speech that contribute to produce this poetic charm? This became another important school, and we will be taking up Vakrokti as in our next sessions, because this is part of our syllabus unit 1. And then we have Buddhist and Jain schools also. And when we talk of Buddhist and Jain schools, they are very similar to that of post-structuralism. Buddhist Shunyavad, what we call as Shunyavad. When we were discussing theories a little the critical approaches or the approaches to literary theory, we said that we have a post-structuralist Indian concept also of post-structuralism or deconstruction. And Anekantvad is one such school that belongs to Jainism and which propagates deconstructions in its own way. Then we have Buddhist Shunyavad, which both of them are very similar to that of post-structuralism. And we have a school in southern part of India called Tolkapiyam. Tol here refers to ancient and Kapiyam refers to Kavya or literature. So Tolkapiyam deals with phonology. It deals with phonology, it deals with syntax, also deals with semantics, poetics, etc. And there are sections which deal with rasa also in this kind of school. Now when we are talking of Indian literary theory or Indian school of aesthetics, we all know that we don't have much translations into English, because earlier, nowadays it's happening very fast, but earlier not too much attention or interest was shown in Indian critical traditions. So not too much of literature and material is available of Indian school of criticism, but this character of Indian school of criticism, we have to understand in fact appreciating that we have a history and a tradition of dramatic art, we have a history and tradition of science, and we have a treatise called Natya Shastra, which is a complete treatise in itself. In our next session, we will discuss. Now, students, these terms which we have dropped in this session, like Alamkara school or Riti school, Dhwani school, Buddhist Shunyavad, Jain Anekantvad, we must read it more to understand the basics and the nuances of Indian literary criticism. In our next session, we will take up the first chapter by Kapila Vatsyayan on Natya Shastra, which has been prescribed for our